The thundering sound of hooves echoed through the dusty streets of Redstone, a town where the sun scorched the earth during the day and shadows lengthened into darkness at night. Somewhere behind the saloon's swinging doors, laughter mingled with the sharp clink of glasses. Inside, the smell of whiskey and sweat hung heavy in the air. It was a Friday night, and the saloon was buzzing with life. But outside, a different kind of tension crackled in the hot air. In the back room, Clara, the saloon owner's daughter, stood by the window, her chest tight with anxiety. Her father, a man weighed down by the burden of his establishment and its many unsavory patrons, had become a stranger to her over the years. She felt trapped, suffocated under the weight of expectations and the familiar hum of drunken revelries. Her father's voice boomed, cutting through her thoughts. "Get in here." She flinched. The last thing she wanted was to step into that noisy room filled with rough men and their crude jokes. With a heavy heart, she turned away from the window and slid the heavy door open. As she stepped over the threshold, a wave of raucous laughter hit her like a wall. She fought the urge to retreat to the sanctuary of her room, but the looks from those men mixed excitement with disdain, daring her to falter. But just when Clara's foot crossed into that chaotic world, a loud crash erupted from outside. The saloon's patrons hushed, a charged silence following the violent interruption. Instinctively, she turned, moving toward the back door, compelled by something she couldn't yet name. It was in that moment where time stood still and the air thickened that she felt the stirrings of freedom tugging at her heart. The thrill of an escape beckoned her, but she hesitated. Then, the unmistakable sound of a gunshot shattered the silence. Panic rippled through the room, and she saw the men reach for their weapons. Clara turned, her instincts igniting. She slipped through the back door and her breath caught in her throat. She was outside. The cool night air hit her like a wave, sharp and invigorating. She ran, a blur of motion, heart pounding, past the dusty barrels and piles of hay that dotted the back of the saloon. She had never run like this before, fueled by desperation and the insatiable call of freedom. The stars glimmered above her as she dashed down the dimly lit alleyway, faint shadows flickering like ghosts. Her feet pounded on the ground, the rhythmic echo an anthem to her newfound resolve. She was nearly at the end of the alley when she stumbled and fell, catching herself on her hands. Pain shot through her palms, but the adrenaline coursing through her veins dulled the sensation. Scrambling to her feet, she continued on, blurring past rusty fences and forgotten crates. As she emerged from the narrow alley, the night stretched out before her, and so did the vast, open desert. But it was not the stillness of the wide expanse that made her freeze. No, it was the figure emerging from the shadows, illuminated by the pale glow of the moon, that made her heart skip a beat. He stood taller than any man she had ever seen, a rugged gunslinger whose presence seemed to demand the very air around him. His weathered hat cast a deep shadow over his face, hiding his expression, but she could feel the weight of his gaze, intense and calculating. In those heartbeat moments, Clara's mind raced. What was she doing? She had never spoken to a man like this one. Her world had been limited to the confines of the saloon, with its gambling tables and drunken woes. But here was the embodiment of wildness, of chaos, of everything she craved. His voice was deep and smooth, a reassuring rumble against the tension of the night. Clara stammered, goosebumps rising on her skin, not just from fear but from something else, a spark of excitement ignited by danger. The gunslinger moved closer, the moonlight catching the flash of steel at his hip. "You know it isn't safe out here." "It's not what you think," she said, surprising herself with her boldness. She had never been the kind of girl to speak her mind, especially to a man like him. I wanted to breathe." He studied her for a long moment, and in that silence, a connection sparked. It was as if they both shared a secret too potent for words. This wasn't about running from her father or the saloon or the life expected of her. This was about embracing the unknown, a wild, reckless kind of hope. The gunslinger finally broke the silence. "You sure you want to be out here alone in the wild? It's dangerous and it can change a person." Each word resonated with Clara like a drumbeat stirring the depths of her soul. Maybe that's the point. Something flickered in his eyes, an admiration perhaps, as he took a step closer. "You're brave. Or maybe foolish, but either way you've got spunk." "Clara," she replied, her voice steadier now. "Clara," he said, testing her name, wrapping it in a new rhythm. "Colt." It rolled off her tongue like a promise, an adventure waiting to unfold. They stood there, two souls on the edge of something undefined, the desert wind gusting softly between them. It felt surreal, yet as real as the thudding pulse in her veins. She asked, breaking the spell of silence. He chuckled softly, but the sound was tinged with shadows. "Let's just say I've danced with danger one too many times. Sometimes it's better to roam, no roots." Clara felt a strange kinship with this man, a shared understanding that bound them together in that shimmering moonlight. She sensed his walls, deep and tall, but something urged her to push past them. "Maybe we both need to escape," she offered, voice low and inviting. His gaze intensified, weighing the implications of her words. "You know it's not simple, Clara. This world doesn't reel you in gently." She felt unstoppable, standing there beneath the stars. "I don't want to return to that life, a life where I'm just waiting for something to happen." Colt stepped closer, the raw energy between them palpable in the twilight. "You're braver than most, but brave women also need to know how to fight." The tension hung heavy in the air, each heartbeat echoing the truth spoken in shared glances. Clara felt the pull, felt the gravity of his being. His lips curved into a slight smile, impressed. "Yes, take me with you," she said, heart racing. Colt looked pensive, shadows of indecision crossing his face. "All right, but it's not just adventure. There's danger everywhere." "I promise," she declared, exhilaration coursing through her veins. And in that moment her life shifted like sand at her feet, cascading into something new and vibrant. "Then let's go," Colt said, a glimmer of something in his eyes, a mixture of respect and caution. He turned, the night swallowing him as he walked deeper into the darkness, beyond the reach of the saloon and its mundane miseries. Clara took a deep breath and followed him, heart thumping hard with the thrill of the unknown. As she stepped into the world with Colt, she felt more alive than she ever had. The dusty roads before them stretched wide and welcoming, whispering promises of freedom and danger. And yet, the sense of urgency surged through her. She could still hear echoes from the saloon behind her, the laughter fading, replaced by the weight of her past. A decision had been made, a leap into the wild unknown, but with it came the realization that everything would change. The looming idea of consequence danced in her mind, but she swatted it away, a defiant spark urging her forward. "Keep up," Colt called back, glancing over his shoulder, a challenge in his tone. Clara's lips pulled into a smile. She was ready for whatever lay ahead. She felt like a flame breaking free from a suffocating glass jar, a bottled-up spirit unleashed. Through the desolate landscape, they journeyed together, two wanderers forging a path through shadows, under the watchful gaze of stars, unknowing of the adventures and dangers that awaited them. The gunslinger's laugh mixed with her own as they rode into the unknown, a sound like thunder in the tranquility of the night. And no matter the trails ahead treacherous or thrilling, Clara knew she had stepped into her fate, a path painted in bold strokes of hope and fear, all rolled into one audacious escape. The sound of gunfire cracked through the night, echoing like an ominous warning. Clara stood at the back door of her father's saloon, heart racing, torn between the familiar chaos inside and the wild unknown outside. Dust swirled in the air, swirling around her like a tempest of uncertainty as the laughter and shouts of drunken patrons fell silent, replaced by heavy tension. "That's it," she whispered to herself, breath hitched in her throat. She had spent too long watching life pass her by, stifled by the clamor of men with whiskey-soaked words and eyes that saw her only as the saloon owner's daughter. Tonight, she felt the pull of freedom, a fire igniting within her. She glanced back at the raucous laughter beyond the swinging doors, men clinking glasses, their voices slurring under the weight of inebriation. She had always felt out of place there, suffocated by their crude stories and rowdy antics, but tonight was different. The world outside beckoned, a vast expanse of unknown possibilities. With a sudden burst of courage, Clara pushed through the door and stepped outside, her heart pounding like a drum. The cool night air slapped against her skin, thrilling and terrifying all at once. She ran, feet pounding against the hard ground, darting past crates and barrels stacked carelessly in the alley. Her father's voice rang out from within the saloon, sharp and demanding, but she refused to turn back. She dashed down the narrow alley, scrapes and bruises forgotten in her rush to escape. The feeling of freedom wasn't just a whim. It was a desperate need to escape a life that felt more like a cage every day. As she reached the end of the alley, the moon broke through a veil of clouds, casting silver light over the desolate streets of Redstone. But before she could fully embrace the vastness of the world outside, she nearly collided with a figure emerging from the shadows. There he stood, tall and formidable, a gunslinger whose presence commanded the very air around him. His hat dipped low over his brow, masking his eyes but not the tension in the air. Clara's heart raced. She recognized the danger etched into the lines of his face, but there was something equally alluring, a hint of rebellion, a promise wrapped in mystery. "Easy there, girl." His voice was low, smooth like whiskey, a mixture of warning and curiosity. Clara's breath caught. She was caught between fear and excitement, an intoxicating mix that had her heart racing even faster. "I'm not afraid of you," she declared, surprising even herself. The gunslinger chuckled softly, and she felt the grip of her past loosen ever so slightly. "Maybe you should be," he replied, steps closing the distance between them. Clara's boldness grew, a defiance rising within her. "Colt," he said, the name hanging in the air like a challenge. "And you, Clara." She hesitated, every instinct screaming to hold her cards close, yet in this moment of raw vulnerability she confessed, "I'm running from a life I didn't choose. The saloon, the expectations." Colt studied her, a flicker of understanding passing between them. "You're brave to leave it all behind." "Bravery, more like desperation," Clara admitted, the honesty spilling from her lips like a long-held secret. The weight of her choices pressed down, and for the first time she felt the freedom of sharing her truth. "You've got spirit, but out here there's danger waiting," Colt warned. "I know," she replied defiantly, muscles tense, "but at least it's real." The desert air grew heavy around them, the stars twinkling above, distant and indifferent. Clara felt the gravity of the moment, the crossroads of her life unfolding in front of her. "Come with me," she said suddenly. Colt's eyebrows shot up in surprise, but intrigue danced in his eyes too. "You hardly know me, Clara. Dangerous men roam this land." More than anything, she breathed, the yearning in her heart palpable. She didn't want to look back to the life where every moment felt carved from stone. She craved chaos, raw and unfiltered, and Colt was her gateway. He looked at her, weighing the weight of her impulsive request. "You're serious, then?" The finality of her word hung between them, heavy as the night sky. Colt took a moment, the air thick with uncertainty. "All right, but there are rules. You stick close and you do what I say, no wandering off." "I know," she assured, excitement surging like wildfire. "Okay then, let's ride," he said, stepping aside, a silent invitation into his world. Clara could hardly contain the exhilaration bubbling inside her. This wasn't just a leap into danger, this was liberation. She was no longer the shy daughter of the saloon owner. She was Clara, the girl who would chase the horizon, no matter where it led. They walked towards his horse, a magnificent beast with a coat like polished obsidian. "Now this part's important," Colt said as he helped her up onto the saddle. "If you fall off, you get back up." "I won't back down," she said, determination blooming in her chest. With a swift motion, Colt mounted his horse, and with a click of his tongue, they took off into the night, galloping down the dirt road. Clara held on tight, the rush of wind whipping her hair against her face. The desert opened up before them, an unending expanse where the moonlight danced off the scrub brush and shadows whispered secrets. "Keep your eyes open," Colt called back, his voice steady against the rush of wind. With each mile they rode, Clara felt the shackles of her past clinking off. Freedom tasted like wildflowers and warm summer nights. Colt led them toward the unknown, a road winding through the hills where stars winked above, guiding them toward adventure. As they rode deeper into the night, Clara felt as if she had stepped into a world spun from danger and dreams. But with Colt beside her, the fear seemed smaller, a mere whisper against the roar of her heart. They reached a small clearing, moonlight spilling down onto the ground as if created just for them. Colt slowed and they both dismounted. Clara could hardly keep her eyes off him, the way he moved with confidence, every action fluid and purposeful. She was captivated. She asked, her breath catching, Colt glanced at the stars, a thoughtful expression shadowing his features. "We make camp. You need to know how to handle yourself out here." Clara nodded, ready. Wanted to learn, silently promising to rise to whatever challenges lay ahead. As Colt set up camp, her heart swelled with newfound purpose. She wasn't simply escaping anymore, she was on a journey. With every lesson Colt shared, she felt her spirit awaken. They built a fire and the flames crackled, throwing shadows that danced against the night. "Tell me about yourself," Clara said, her voice softening in the warmth of the flickering light. Colt shifted, leaning back against a rock. "Not much to tell. Grew up with a father who believed the only way to survive was to wield a gun." His words resonated within her. "I understand." Colt asked, piercing through the layers of her hesitation. "I want to discover who I really am," she confessed, each word peeling back layers she had hidden for so long. Colt nodded, understanding reflected in his gaze. Hours melted away as they shared stories, laughter threading through the night air. Clara realized that with every word, every moment spent with Colt, she was finding parts of herself she never knew existed. He was no longer just a gunslinger in the shadows. He became a guide, showing her the ropes of a world rich with danger and breathtaking beauty. But as the fire dwindled, shadows grew longer, whispering secrets of the night. The reality of their choice began to take root, and Clara sensed the urgency of their situation. She asked, a cautious tone creeping into her voice. Colt's demeanor shifted slightly, the weight of truth pressing down on him. "Safe. No place in this world is truly safe, Clara. The night is full of hungry men looking for trouble." The thrill of adventure clashed with a sudden surge of fear. What had she stepped into? She wasn't just exposing herself to the thrill of the unknown, she was risking everything. But even as doubt crept in, Clara felt a surge of defiance. She wasn't going back. Not now, not ever. She asked, voice steady despite the tumult within. Colt looked at her, pride flickering in his eyes. "There's a town north, just beyond the ridge. People there are welcoming enough, but they'll see right through you if you hide behind that pretty face of yours." "Then let's go," Clara said, determination setting her tone. Together they extinguished the fire, leaving no trace behind, becoming phantoms of the night. The path ahead was dark, the cool air nipping at their skin as they mounted their horses once more. Clara's heartbeat synced with the rhythm of hoofbeats against the earth, a steady thrum that felt like a heartbeat of its own. The world unfurled before them, each turn igniting the spirit of adventure within her. Their journey continued, night stretching on, mingled with determination and the thrill of the unknown. Clara had crossed a threshold she once thought impossible, trading the safety of her past for the wild pulse of life coursing through her. And as the first light of dawn began to illuminate the horizon, she knew deep in her heart that this was only the beginning. No longer just the saloon owner's daughter, she had become Clara, a woman forged in the fires of wild dreams and the promise of her own destiny. In the arms of the gunslinger beside her, she felt alive in a way she never thought possible, ready to confront challenges and dance with dangers still unknown. Together, they'd carved their own path in the wild world ahead. The saloon was now just a fading memory, and what lay ahead shimmered with vivid possibility. Clara had escaped through that back door, not just into the arms of a gunslinger, but into a life that was truly hers. The future stretched wide before her, and she was ready to embrace it all. The saloon was alive with rowdy laughter, the clinking of glasses, and the sharp, smoky scent of whiskey that hung thick in the air. Clara stood behind the bar, her heart heavy with the weight of a life already scripted for her. The men around her filled the dimly lit room with raucous stories, each tale more exaggerated than the last, a cacophony that drowned out her thoughts. She felt like a ghost, tethered to the mundane comforts of her father's establishment, yearning to escape. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the laughter. Clara's heart raced as she turned to see a group of men erupt into a brawl, fists flying and chairs toppling. Adrenaline surged through her veins. Fear clutched her throat as the chaos unfolded, each punch a reminder of the harsh world she lived in. "Clara!" Her father's voice boomed from across the bar, gruff and commanding. But instead of obeying, something deep within her stirred. The familiar dread clawed at her insides. Tonight felt different. For the first time, the yearning to break free overwhelmed her fear. This was the moment she'd been waiting for. Without a second thought, she darted toward the back door, heart pounding as she pushed through the swinging doors and into the cool night air. The moon hung high above, casting a silver glow over the dusty streets of Redstone. She paused for a heartbeat, inhaling the freedom she'd only dared to dream of. The world outside felt alive. The stars twinkled as if cheering her on. Clara glanced back at the chaos in the saloon, watching her father shout over the chaos, frustration etched into his face. But tonight she wouldn't be pulled back into that life. She started down the alley, heart racing, footsteps echoing against the cobblestone as her breath quickened. With every step, the weight of her old life faded. She ran, lungs burning, making a beeline for the end of the alley. But as she emerged into the open, she nearly collided with a figure standing in the shadows. Tall, broad-shouldered, and cloaked in mystery, he stood there like death itself, a gunslinger darkened by the moonlight. His hat tipped low, obscuring his eyes, but Clara could feel his gaze boring into her with fierce intensity. He asked, his voice gravelly yet smooth, like the rumble of distant thunder. The words felt both terrifying and exhilarating. The gunslinger smirked, taking a step closer. "You know it's dangerous out here." "I'm not afraid," she replied, pushing back her fear, feeling the adrenaline pumping through her veins. He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "You should be." Clara opened her mouth to respond, but found herself searching for the right words. "I don't want to be tied down." His gaze softened momentarily. "Living is more than just running away, girl." With those cryptic words, he fell silent, eyes scanning the dimly lit street as if sensing danger creeping on them. She felt a strange connection in that moment. He, a man who had likely seen more darkness than she could imagine, seemed to understand her desire to break free. "My name's Colt," he said after a pause, taking another step closer. Clara felt an electric thrill course through her body. She echoed, curiosity piqued. "Follow me, but stay close." He turned and began to walk away, confidence rolling off him in waves. Instincts kicked in as Clara followed. Each hurried step felt like a weight lifted, a freedom she had only ever dreamt of. With every beat of her heart, she distanced herself from the saloon and the expectations that bound her. They moved through the shadows, keeping to the back streets of Redstone. Colt led with purpose, his boots crunching on gravel. Clara's mind raced, not only with excitement but also with the lingering uncertainties of the past. Yet in that moment, she was fueled by adventure, a fire she had long suppressed. She asked, breathless as they slipped into an alley that felt alive with possibility. "Out of town," Colt replied casually. Clara puzzled, trying to decipher what he meant. "People who know how to survive." He shot her an appraising glance. She nodded fiercely. After navigating through the winding alleys and deserted streets, they reached a clearing. The moon illuminated a cluster of scraggly trees standing guard over a landscape painted in shades of midnight. Colt whistled for a horse tethered nearby. Clara's heart raced. It was game time. Within moments, Colt had swung onto the saddle, extending a hand for her to join him. Trembling with exhilaration, Clara accepted his grip, feeling the firm warmth of his hand as he pulled her up. She settled in behind him, her heart thumping in rhythm with the booming gallops of their escape. "Hold tight," he said, barely a whisper before they bolted off into the night. The wind whipped her hair back, exhilarating and refreshing, as the landscape melded into a blur of shadows and moonlight. Clara felt alive, fully awake for the first time. They galloped over sandy trails, moving deeper into the unknown. With each mile, her fears melted away, replaced by a relentless craving for liberation. She wanted to taste the thrill of freedom, to grasp what it truly meant to live, away from the suffocating walls of the saloon and her father's expectations. After some time, Colt slowed the horse to a steady trot. Clara scanned the horizon as it stretched wide before them, dark and inviting. She breathed in the cool night air, feeling the weight of past burdens loosen bit by bit like shackles falling away. Colt asked, breaking the night's stillness. The question hung in the air, and Clara found herself searching for the right words. She began. "Growing up in the saloon, I was always just the owner's daughter. People looked at me with other people's expectations." He nodded, listening intently. Clara exclaimed, her voice rising with passion. I've watched women in this town live their lives on the sidelines, waiting for a man to define them. I don't want that." Colt's expression softened, admiration flickering in his eyes. "You've got fight, Clara." Silence fell between them, each absorbed in their thoughts as the horse trotted patiently, seemingly aware of the weight of their shared stories. Clara couldn't help but steal glances at Colt. He was not just a gunslinger, he was someone who understood the cost of freedom. After what felt like hours, they reached a high ridge, the landscape opening up before them in a breathtaking panorama. The moon painted silver across the rolling hills, a tapestry of shadows and light. Clara could hardly breathe. It was beautiful in a way that ignited something deep within her. "Let's stop here," Colt said, slowing the horse to a halt. They dismounted and Clara stepped forward to take in the view, feeling the pulse of the night. "It's breathtaking," she whispered, awestruck. "Life can be," Colt replied, stepping beside her. "I know," Clara said quietly, her heart pounding with anticipation and trepidation. He turned to her, searching her expression. "You're playing with fire, Clara." "I'd rather chase the fire than stay in the shadows," she declared, a spark igniting in her soul. Colt nodded, a hint of respect surfacing in his gaze. They stood together in the moonlight, the world vast and intoxicating around them. Just then, the distant sound of hoofbeats shattered their moment, growing louder as they approached. Colt stiffened, aware of the danger before Clara even understood. "Get behind me," he commanded, his voice low and steady. She felt the rush of fear clamping down, but she complied, instinctively stepping back. Riders emerged from the shadows, silhouettes cloaked in darkness, their faces hidden beneath wide-brimmed hats. They slowed their horses in front of Colt, eyes glinting like predatory animals. Well, look what we have here," one of them sneered, voice dripping with malice. Colt stepped forward, a protective barrier between Clara and the men. "Back off," he warned, voice calm but laden with threat. The lead rider taunted, taking a step closer to Clara. The air around them thickened with tension. The light-hearted freedom Clara had felt moments before evaporated, replaced by the chilling grip of fear. But then she remembered the fire that burned within her. Colt glared at the group, muscles tense as he stood his ground. "She doesn't look like she can handle herself, partner," another rider chimed in, laughter dripping from his voice. In that moment, Clara felt a surge of courage ripple through her. She stepped out from behind Colt and faced the men head-on. "I'm not afraid of you," she declared, her voice steady despite the rapid beat of her heart. The riders hesitated, caught off guard by her unexpected defiance. Colt shot a glance at her, surprised yet proud. Well, look at that. A little fire in her," the lead rider said, amusement flickering across his face. Colt asked, drawing his weapon slowly, the gesture smooth and calculated. The tension hung thick in the air, the standoff electrifying. Clara felt every heartbeat, the weight of the moment hanging precariously. She could sense the danger, but alongside it, she felt an exhilarating rush of power coursing through her veins. The lead rider exchanged a glance with his companions, a silent communication passing between them. With a snarl, he spurred his horse around and motioned for the others to follow. "Let's get out of here, boys." As they retreated into the night, Clara felt the air pull tight, the void of their presence giving way to a sense of relief mixed with adrenaline. She breathed, looking up at Colt, wide-eyed. "They got spooked by your bravery," Colt replied, shaking his head in disbelief. "But I had to stand up," she said, the words tumbling from her lips. "I've spent so long hiding." "That's the spirit," he said, respect filling his tone. "I'm ready for it," Clara affirmed resolutely. Colt studied her closely, the moonlight catching the edges of his rugged features. "You've got fight, and that's essential in this world, but you'll need more than bravery." "I want to learn," she said, determination blazing in her eyes. "All in good time," Colt replied, a knowing smile creeping onto his lips. "For now, let's keep moving." As dawn broke across the horizon, painting the sky in vivid hues of orange and pink, Clara felt a sense of renewal. She was no longer merely a shadow within the walls of a saloon. She was stepping into her own light, ready to confront the adventures and dangers that awaited her. With Colt by her side, she was finally embracing the wild unknown, carving her own path with every step. Freedom was not just an escape. It was the journey she had longed for, and she would not take a single moment for granted. Together, they rode into the morning sun, freedom painting their future with colors only the brave could dare to dream. Clara closed her eyes, breathing in the sweet scent of possibility, feeling alive with each heartbeat, ready for whatever lay ahead. A new chapter had begun. The saloon doors swung open with a creak, and Clara caught sight of it, the moment her life would change forever. Screams and laughter filled the air, the chaos henpecking at her heart as punches flew and chairs toppled over in a wild brawl. It was not unusual to see trouble brewing on a Friday night in Redstone, but tonight felt different. Tonight, the air crackled with energy, an electric thrill whispering in her ear, urging her to run. Clara! Her father's voice boomed from behind the bar, forcing her to flinch with the sudden reminder of her reality. She stood frozen for a moment, watching the patrons thrash about, drunken bravado morphing into unrestrained violence. Clara had grown up in this saloon, learned the rhythms and routines of its disheveled patrons, but now all she felt was suffocated. In that moment of chaos, she made a choice that would rewrite her story. With breath hitching in her throat, she dashed toward the back door, a place she rarely ventured. In the shadows, the chilly air surrounded her like a protective cloak. Freedom lay just beyond, she could almost taste it. The dust clung to her boots as she stumbled into the cool night. The moon cast an illuminating glow, showcasing the serenity of the world outside, a stark contrast to the turmoil she had left behind. Clara stood for a moment, absorbing the stillness, the quiet that felt unmatched after the uproar inside. The thrill of escaping ignited something deep within her, a desire long buried beneath expectations. She was no longer just the saloon owner's daughter, but as she turned to run into the dark alley, a shadow loomed in front of her, blocking her path. She skidded to a halt, adrenaline racing through her veins. There he stood, a gunslinger cloaked in mystery. His posture was relaxed, yet something in his eyes warned of untamed power. The cool night air hung heavy between them, a moment crystallized in time. He drawled, voice deep like a distant thunderstorm. "Escaped," she managed to say, heart pounding, half surreptitious and half defiant. A teasing smirk crept across his rugged face. "Safer than in there," she shot back, surprising herself with the strength of her words. It felt exhilarating to stand against someone like him. The thrill coursed through her veins, fighting against the fear that had clung to her for so long. "You're bold," he said, tilting his hat slightly as if to study her. "But boldness comes with its own set of dangers." Clara took a step forward, refusing to back down. "But I've spent too long waiting for something to happen." His eyes narrowed slightly, weighing her words as he let out a low chuckle. "More than ever," she replied, urgency igniting a fire within. Every second spent standing still felt like an entire lifetime lost. He asked, stepping closer. "Clara," she said firmly, never breaking her gaze from his. He rolled the name off his tongue as if he were testing it out. The name hung in the air, heavy and full of unspoken tales. In that moment, Clara didn't just see a gunslinger. She saw an escape route, a spark that ignited her wish for something more. "I need to leave this place," she admitted, vulnerability creeping into her voice. Colt asked, that same teasing smirk playing on his lips again. "I've never been more ready," she declared, feeling a surge of adrenaline electrify her body. Without another word, Colt stepped back, his presence beckoning her deeper into the night. She followed his lead, heart racing with anticipation. They slipped past rows of dusty old barrels, shadows stretching out behind them as if urging them forward. "Keep quiet," he advised, glancing over his shoulder as they moved. They made their way through the shallow paths, avoiding the glow of lanterns and the murmur of late-night card games. It felt like stepping into a different world, one where danger mingled with excitement at every turn. Clara felt alive in ways she never had before. Colt asked, keeping his voice low, yet it carried a weighted curiosity. "I grew up here," she admitted, "but it's never felt like home." "A cage, huh? Sounds familiar," he mused. "I left home behind a long time ago. Life on the road suits me better." Clara glanced at him, intrigued. Was he running from something too, or was he simply chasing the freedom that eluded so many? They arrived at the edge of town where the last remnants of civilization faded into the looming wild. Colt stopped abruptly, turning to face her. "More than ever," Clara reaffirmed, the thrill curling in the pit of her stomach. He gestured to a sleek black horse tied to a post, muscles rippling underneath its coat like smooth stone. With a swift motion, he mounted. Clara hesitated only for a moment before following suit. The rush of excitement enveloped her as she settled behind him, gripping the leather of the saddle tightly. "Let's ride," Colt said, and with that command they shot into the night, hooves pounding against dirt and gravel, the world blurring around them in a wild dance of shadows. As they galloped into the open expanse, something within Clara shifted. She inhaled the crisp air, tasting freedom in every breath. Life felt electric, thrilling, as if each moment was a heartbeat echoing with potential. Colt shouted over the wind, lopsided grinning dancing on his lips as the landscape unfurled around them. Clara replied, laughter bubbling in her throat. "Just hold on, Clara," he yelled, urging the horse into a full gallop. The exhilarating rush felt like flying, every ounce of tension melting away as she surrendered to the moment. They tore through the darkness, the moonlight illuminating their path. Clara glanced over her shoulder at the fading town, her past slipping further and further away. Each thundering hoofbeat marked the distance from the shackles that had held her, the weight of invisible chains blowing away in the wind. Colt led them down a winding path through rocky terrain, navigating effortlessly. With every turn, Clara felt more alive. She felt raw and wild, an untamed spirit yearning to roam. Time dissolved as they rode, the horizon blending into the swirling darkness that enveloped them. It was as if they had stepped into a world apart, one filled with possibility. But then a glint of movement flashed in the distance. Clara tensed, glancing up. Colt's expression hardened. The silhouette of men emerged from the shadows, a group of rough riders blocking their path. Clara felt fear creep in, sinking like stones in her stomach. The tension was thick and heavy, a pulse of danger dancing in the air. Colt slowed, stepping in front of Clara protectively. She felt a mix of fear and adrenaline, the danger of the situation igniting a sense of empowerment within her. One of the men called out, voice gravelly like broken glass. Colt's demeanor shifted instantly, eyes steely and commanding as he met their challenge head-on. "We're just passing through," he replied casually, but Clara could sense the underlying tension. "You got a pretty little thing with you," another man sneered, eyes narrowing in on Clara. She felt a shiver down her spine, but instead of cowering, she squared her shoulders. "And you're trespassing," she said boldly, surprising even herself with the strength of her voice. The leader smirked, amusement dancing in his eyes. "Back off," Colt warned, but Clara felt a sudden surge of bravery. Clara shot back, standing tall beside Colt, feeling the heat of defiance burn within her. The men exchanged glances, caught off guard by her unexpected fire. "We can do this peacefully," Colt said, voice steady, yet Clara sensed the simmering tension beneath his calm exterior. "Peace, such a pretty word," the leader taunted, taking a step closer. Without warning, the atmosphere shifted, tension snapping like a taut wire. Clara's heart raced, instincts screaming. "Don't," Colt warned, his stance unwavering, protective like a bulwark against the chaos around them. In an instant, everything erupted, fists flying, the air thick with violence as Colt moved with agility and precision, defending Clara fiercely. Clara stood there, fear and exhilaration colliding. While Colt fought, she felt an unfamiliar rush within her. It was a potent mix of terror and raw power, a realization that this world, while dangerous, held vibrant possibilities for someone with grit. As the fight wore on, Clara felt her pulse pounding, adrenaline flooding every inch of her. She could feel the stakes rising, tension electrifying the air. Colt took out the last of the men. They retreated, leaving only silence behind them. Breathing heavily, Clara turned to him, awe swirling in her thoughts. "Of course I did," he said, somewhat surprised. "You're part of this now, Clara." "I didn't think I could," she admitted, heart still racing, the thrill of combat awakening a dormant fire inside her. "Don't underestimate yourself. You've got more fight than you know," he said, slinging an arm over her shoulder, pride glimmering in his eyes. For the first time, Clara felt it, the badge of courage. She was alive, dancing on the edge of danger, forging her identity not just as the saloon owner's daughter, but as Clara, an unyielding woman ready to take on the world. The remnants of the confrontation faded into the distance as they mounted their horses once more, galloping into the unknown. The horizon stretched wide, filled with the promise of new beginnings. Clara felt liberated, exhilarated, and armed with a newfound understanding that she had the strength to navigate the wild landscape ahead. And together, they rode into the dawn, two spirits entwined on a quest for freedom, ready to embrace whatever came their way. The saloon was just a fading memory, a whisper behind them as they charged forward into an unpredictable future, and Clara knew she would never look back. The world was now hers to run into, wild and uncharted, and she was ready to make her mark. The saloon erupted into chaos, the sound of shattering glass mingling with the wild whoops of drunken men. Clara stood frozen behind the bar, heart pounding in her chest. It wasn't her first time witnessing a brawl, but tonight felt different. The air shimmered with something more than just whiskey and smoke. It felt electric, like a storm about to break. Clara, her father's voice roared over the fray, dragging her back into the suffocating grip of responsibility. She glanced at him, a man worn thin by the demands of running a saloon filled with rough men and wild tempers. But at that moment, his voice only fueled the fire of her discontent. She longed to break free from the expectations of being the saloon owner's daughter. Without thinking, she bolted toward the back door, heart racing. This was her chance. As she swung open the wooden door, the cool night air washed over her like a wave of freedom. She stepped outside, and the chaos behind her faded, an echo swallowed by the serenity of the empty street. Stars twinkled above, bright against the deep canvas of the night. Clara felt a mixture of exhilaration and fear. Her heart thumped in her chest like a drum, urging her to run into the dark unknown. She didn't know where she was going, but the urgency to escape fueled her legs. As she darted down the alley, the cobblestone beneath her feet felt uneven, a reminder of the life she was abandoning. Each step she took was a step toward freedom, a step toward becoming someone other than what everyone expected her to be. But as she rounded a corner, she skidded to a halt. There he stood, a silhouette against the moonlight, a gunslinger. He was tall, his broad shoulders wrapped in a rugged duster that whispered of wild adventures. His hat cast a shadow over his eyes, but even from the distance she could feel the heat of his gaze. He asked, voice like gravel, deep and commanding. "I'm escaping," she said, surprising herself with the words. They clawed their way out of her throat, raw and real. He chuckled softly, a low, dangerous sound. "I'm safer than in there," she replied, defiance sparking in her chest. The thrill of the unknown ignited something deep within her. He stepped closer, studying her with keen interest. Clara met his eyes, feeling the pull of danger and desire. "I've had enough of being caged." The gunslinger raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her fire. "I've never been more ready," she declared, her spirit flaring with every beat of her heart. "Life on the road isn't for the faint of heart," he warned, eyes narrowing slightly. The words spilled from her lips, a promise even she wasn't sure she could keep. "Colt," he said suddenly, extending a hand toward her. "That's my name." "Clara," she replied, feeling the intimacy of the moment wrap around them like a thread tying their fates together. With a flash of a smile that ignited something in her chest, Colt turned and began to walk deeper into the shadows, seamlessly gliding into the darkness. Clara hesitated for just a heartbeat before following him, adrenaline surging through her veins. Each step felt like a leap forward, pulling her further away from the life she'd always known. They navigated through the back streets, moving quickly and quietly. Clara's heart raced not just with fear but with excitement. The world outside the saloon felt alive, and the stars shone down like silver coins scattered across a vast, inky sky. She whispered, her breath coming in quick bursts. "Out of town," Colt replied, glancing back at her, "and into a life that's untamed. There's a ranch beyond the ridge that takes in drifters like us." With each word, clarity sharpened in Clara's mind. She was no longer a timid girl waiting for life to change. She was choosing her path. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. As they reached the outskirts of town, the sounds of revelry faded into silence. They stepped into the open air, and the weight of the world seemed to lift. Colt untethered a sleek black horse, a creature built for speed and strength. He mounted with an ease that seemed second nature, then extended his hand to her. "Hold on tight," he instructed as she climbed up behind him, heart leaping into her throat. And then they were off, galloping into the night, the wind whipping through her hair. Clara clung to Colt, feeling the powerful stride of the horse beneath them, every beat against the ground resonating in her chest. The landscape blurred into a tapestry of shadows, and for the first time in her life she felt boundless. Colt shouted over the rush of wind. Clara replied, laughter bubbling up, mixed with fear and freedom. The thrill was almost dizzying. They rode hard, the horse's hooves pounding a rhythm against the earth, and each mile stretched like a promise of the uncharted territory ahead. Clara felt like she was leaving every ounce of her past behind, the chains of expectation falling away as they tore through the dark. After what felt like hours, they reached a ridge that overlooked the sprawling expanse of the open land. The moon hung high, illuminating the fields of dry grass that swayed in the cool night breeze. Colt brought the horse to a stop, and Clara slid off, breathless and overwhelmed by the raw beauty that stretched before her. Colt asked, stepping next to her, watching the horizon as if it held the answers to all their questions. "It's incredible," Clara whispered, clutching her chest. "There's freedom here," he said, his voice low. "I understand," she replied, a mixture of exhilaration and seriousness washing over her. They stood side by side, taking it all in. The night was electric, a blend of unfulfilled dreams and new beginnings, and Clara felt her spirit awakening, ready to embrace whatever came next. But then from the darkness behind them came the sound of galloping hooves, interrupting their moment. Clara's heart sank. Colt's posture shifted instantly, and he turned sharply, his body tense like a coiled spring. "Get behind me," he commanded, keeping his voice steady. Fear surged through Clara as she obeyed, instinctively stepping back to let him shield her from whatever approached. Riders emerged from the shadows, dark silhouettes framed by the dim moonlight. One of them called, voice dripping with menace. "Just passing through," Colt replied, voice calm yet firm. Another rider leered, eyes locking onto Clara, making her skin crawl. "Keep your eyes to yourself," Colt warned, stepping protectively in front of her. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut, and Clara could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The danger was palpable, but oddly it fueled her courage. These men didn't scare her. She was tired of being afraid. One of the riders sneered, drawing closer. "Back off while you still can," Colt replied, voice low and steady. For a heartbeat, time stretched and Clara's breath caught. She could sense a confrontation brewing, the air thick with hostility. But instead of cowering, she stepped out from behind Colt, heart racing, newfound resolve surging through her. She shouted, surprising even herself, her voice clear and strong. The men hesitated, caught off guard by her fire. Colt shot her a sidelong glance, a mix of surprise and pride in his eyes. "Seems she's got some fight," the lead rider laughed, but Clara remained firm, grounding herself in confidence. "Let's make a deal," she proposed, surprising everyone. "What do you think this is, a game?" "Boys, I think we should teach her a lesson," the leader taunted, stepping closer. Colt snapped, drawing his weapon with a swift motion, the sharp shine of steel glinting in the moonlight. In an instant, chaos erupted. Fists flew, and Colt moved like a force of nature, defending her fiercely. Clara was stunned but felt an exhilarating rush at the back of her mind, honoring the power she found within. She watched as Colt engaged with precision, each movement controlled and fierce, a beautiful dance of survival. Clara felt alive in that moment, witnessing the struggle for freedom and dignity play out before her eyes. As they fought, Clara realized this was not just Colt battling for her. It was also her chance to stand strong beside him. She grabbed a fallen branch, feeling its weight in her hands, and charged alongside him. She yelled, shocking even herself. Surprise flickered across the faces of the riders. As they stumbled back, they hesitated just long enough for Colt to take control, swiftly disarming the closest assailant. "Now go," he commanded, his voice cutting through the tension. The riders, sensing they were outmatched, pulled back and retreated into the shadows from which they had come, leaving only silence behind. Shaking, Clara turned to Colt, all reflecting in her eyes. "Of course I did," he said, breathless, yet there was a warmth in his tone. In that moment, Clara felt a rush of pride washing over her. She had faced danger and stood her ground. She wasn't merely the owner's daughter anymore. She was Clara, a woman forged by fire, fierce enough to stand strong in the face of fear. Colt asked, checking her gaze, half smiling. "Absolutely," Clara responded, determination sparking in her spirit. They mounted their horses, solidifying their partnership in whimsical danger and adventure. Clara felt alive, feeling a bond crafted in the heat of battle and the thrill of possibility. As the moonlight illuminated their path, they rode deeper into the night, laughter echoing with each thundering hoofbeat. Clara felt the rust of confinement fall away, embracing the freedom that had eluded her for so long. This was no longer just a night of escape. It was the first step into a new life. A life filled with unpredictability, challenges, and, most importantly, her own choices. With Colt by her side, she felt empowered and weightless, ready to forge her own path in a world full of opportunities, marked by the scars of yesterday but brimming with hope for tomorrow. The saloon was a fading memory, a whisper in the night, as they charged into the evolving story of their lives, two souls destined to chase freedom together, bound by shared adventure and adrenaline. And Clara knew, deep down, that she would never look back. The future awaited, untamed and uncharted, and she was ready to embrace every wild moment that lay ahead. The horizon beckoned as they galloped into the dawn, a scene painted with the colors of hope and the promise of new beginnings. The sound of breaking glass echoed through the saloon, shattering the false sense of calm that had wrapped around Clara like a worn blanket. Gasps floated in the air as patrons abruptly shifted from laughter to tension, their eyes narrowing. The bar, her family's livelihood, had become a battleground, and they were no longer safe inside. Clara squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, her heart pounding in her chest. Just a few weeks ago, the bar had felt like a prison with expectations binding her like chains. But tonight, as fists clenched and anger erupted, something inside her snapped. She was done waiting, done watching her life slip through her fingers like the whiskey the men poured into their glasses. Clara. Her father boomed, his voice cutting through the chaos. A rush of frustration boiled within her. He always needed her to help, to serve those unruly men who saw her not as his daughter but as a prize to be won. Just the thought made her stomach churn. Instead of obeying, she turned her back on the madness and bolted toward the back door, adrenaline propelling her forward. She flung open the heavy wooden door and stepped into the cool night air, the chaos dimming behind her like a distant storm. The world outside felt alive and vibrant, illuminated by the silver moonlight spilling over the dirt-streaked streets of Redstone. Clara inhaled sharply, filling her lungs with a mix of freedom and fear. She had to leave this place. She had to find herself. As she ran down the narrow alleyway, her heart raced with both excitement and dread. She could hear the shouts from inside growing fainter, but behind her came a voice that made her heart drop. She skidded to a halt, colliding with a tall figure blocking her path. Even in the darkness, she could see the outline of a man, eyes glinting in the moonlight like two sharp knives. A gunslinger. She had read about men like him, but never thought she'd encounter one. "Step aside," Clara demanded, channeling a strength she didn't know she possessed. "Not so fast," he replied, his voice smooth yet edged with danger. "I'm not afraid of you," she declared, finding defiance in the chaos of her emotions. He leaned closer, a smirk playing across his lips. "Is that so? But out here you've got to know it's dangerous for girls with fire." "Better than living a lie," Clara shot back, eyes narrowing. The air between them crackled with tension, and she could feel the wildness in his spirit as well. "Colt," he said, extending his hand as if they were old friends. "Clara," she replied, taking his hand, a jolt of electricity passing between them. "And I'm not running anymore." "Leaving, huh?" With a spark of recognition, Clara understood the danger that loomed ahead, not just from Colt, but from the path she was about to choose. It wasn't safe to breathe, let alone ride into the night with a gunslinger. Yet something deep within her stirred at his words. She wanted more than the suffocating existence she had known. Colt stepped back, his demeanor shifting from playful to serious. "You're serious about this?" "I am," she replied, her voice steady now. "I just want to live, Colt." "All right then, but if you ride with me, you better hold on," he said, gesturing toward a sturdy black horse tethered nearby. Clara laughed, a mix of excitement and fear mingling in her voice. With adrenaline racing through her veins, Clara climbed onto the horse behind him, feeling the power of the animal beneath her. Colt kicked the horse into motion and they galloped off, the wind whipping through her hair. As the saloon faded into the distance, Clara felt light. She was no longer just the daughter of the saloon owner. She had shed that identity like a snake shedding its skin. She was becoming something else, something fierce. "Now hold on tight," Colt instructed, glancing back at her. She gripped him tighter, the rhythm of the horses galloping echoing her newfound heartbeat. The world blurred into a canvas painted with shadows and whispers of possibility. Clara's pulse raced as they flew down the road, her fears evaporating like mist in the morning sun. Clara asked, her voice barely audible over the sound of hooves pounding against the dirt. "Anything you want," Colt replied, his tone mixed with a hint of challenge. "But this life, it demands courage and sometimes it will chew you up." With each passing moment, the weight of her previous life blew away, carried off into the night. Uncertainty danced in her gut, but it felt exquisite. The horizon stretched before them, and Clara could feel the freedom in the air, thick and intoxicating like the smell of rain on dry earth. They rode further into the wilderness, where the stars twinkled above like scattered diamonds. The thrill of exploration colored every breath, and Clara laughed aloud, the sound ringing like music through the stillness. For the first time, she felt wholly alive. But soon the open road gave way to the shadows of the trees, and Clara knew they needed to be cautious. Things could turn dangerous out here, and Colt seemed to sense her unease. "Stick close," he instructed, steering the horse deeper into the woods. Just then Clara caught a glimmer of movement up ahead. She asked, pointing into the darkness. "Riders," Colt replied, his voice low and tense. Heart racing, Clara watched as silhouettes on horses emerged from the shadows, blocking their path. The last remnants of her joyful exhilaration evaporated, fear taking its place. One of the riders called out, stepping forward. His voice slithered through the night with a dangerous edge. "Just passing through," Colt replied calmly, but Clara could see the tension in the lines of his body. "Looks like you've got a pretty little thing with you," another rider chimed in, eyeing Clara with a predatory glint. "Keep your eyes to yourself," Colt warned, the heat in his voice rising like a storm about to crack. The lead rider smirked as he dismounted, drawing closer, his intentions evident. "I don't have time for this," Colt said, unholstering his pistol. A thrill of fear shot through Clara, but unexpectedly something else sparked within her. She wasn't just an innocent girl anymore. She was here in this moment, ready to fight alongside Colt. "Stay behind me," Colt instructed, but she could feel the fire building in her chest. Suddenly, the tension broke and chaos erupted. Colt moved with grace and ferocity, defending Clara with every ounce of strength. She felt the exhilaration flood through her as he fought, a wild dance of survival unfurling before her eyes. Clara's mind raced as she grabbed a fallen branch from the ground, feeling the weight of it in her hands. This was her moment. She was no bystander, she was part of this fight. She shouted, charging alongside Colt. The men were taken aback, momentarily stunned by her bravery. In that fraction of a second, it was all she needed. Colt took advantage of their confusion, striking back hard. Together, they unleashed a whirlwind of adrenaline, fists and weapons flying as they defended each other from the surrounding threat. Clara felt the rush of blood pumping in her ears, her heart racing with the thrill of the fight. Before long, the remaining riders fled into the shadows, retreating back into the darkness from which they came. Breathless and wide-eyed, Clara stood beside Colt, adrenaline still coursing through her. "You did good," Colt said, a glimmer of respect shining in his eyes. "I didn't think I could," she admitted, her heart still racing. "It's all about believing in yourself, Clara." As they mounted their horses once more, Clara felt the weight of the battle behind her begin to fade. They had faced danger together, and she was no longer just escaping. She was becoming someone capable of standing on her own 2 feet. As they continued their journey, the moon hung low, and for the first time ever, Clara felt truly free. The expansive sky above felt filled with possibilities, each star a reminder that the world was hers for the taking. Colt glanced back, a sense of camaraderie passing between them. "I'm not afraid," Clara replied, the words ringing true. She felt alive, brimming with newfound strength. With the wind rushing through her hair and the promise of freedom ahead, Clara knew she had stepped beyond the confines of her old life. She was forging a path of her own, one filled with wild dreams, untamed adventure, and the kind of spirit that could face anything life threw her way. The night wrapped around them like a cloak, full of the unknown, yet Clara was no longer afraid. She was stepping into her destiny, armed with the power of choice and a gunslinger beside her, ready to carve out a life that was hers to live. And as they rode deeper into the darkness, the horizon beckoned wide, wild and full of promise. Clara was ready, and she knew she would never look back. The saloon, her past it, was all fading like a bad dream, replaced by a reality that danced along the edges of freedom and adventure, waiting for her to take the next step. The door slammed open, and Clara stood at the threshold, her heart racing as she surveyed the chaos. The saloon overflowed with smoke and laughter, but it was shifting. Tonight something felt different, a storm brewing in the air, crackling with energy. Inside, a drunken brawl erupted, chairs clattering and men shouting. The raucous laughter turned to angry shouts as fists flew, and Clara's breath came in short gasps. Her father's voice rose above the chaos, trying to restore order, but she could already sense the futility in his tone. "Clara!" he roared, frustration lacing his call, but Clara felt something snap inside her. She had spent long enough watching, trapped in a life carved out by others. The walls of the saloon felt like prison bars, and she was ready to break free. Without thinking, she turned on her heel and fled out the back door, leaving the noise behind. The cool night air hit her like a splash of cold water, invigorating and terrifying all at once. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs with the scent of dust and freedom. A deep sense of longing pulsed inside her, and she could hear the thudding of her heart, the rhythm of a wild adventure waiting to begin. Clara darted down the narrow alley, her footsteps echoing softly against the cobblestones. The night felt alive with possibilities, but lingering doubts tried to claw their way into her mind. Her father, the saloon, the life she had known, it all faded into the background. Ahead lay the unknown, a vast expanse of wildness that called to her spirit. And just as she reached the end of the alley, she skidded to a halt. There, leaning against a weathered wall, stood a figure cloaked in shadows, a gunslinger. He was tall and rugged, with a presence that radiated danger and intrigue. His hat was tipped low, obscuring his eyes, but the confidence in his stance sent a shiver down her spine. He asked, voice smooth yet edged with an unsettling allure. Clara's heart raced, a mix of fear and rebellion flooding her veins. "I'm escaping," she said, her voice shaking but determined. He stepped forward, studying her as if gauging her worth. "I'm safer than in there," Clara shot back, her pulse quickening. The gunslinger chuckled, a deep, resonant sound that echoed against the alley walls. The simplicity of his words pierced through her bravado, yet a fire ignited within her. "I don't care." "Colt," he said suddenly, extending a hand toward her, introducing himself in a way that felt both disarming and dangerous. "Clara," she replied, shaking his hand, feeling the warmth radiate from his touch. "Yes," she replied, surprising herself with the confidence she felt. Colt raised an eyebrow, intrigued but also cautious. "I don't know what I'm looking for, but I know it's not here," she said fiercely, feeling the weight of her decision settle in her stomach. He studied her for a moment, then finally nodded. "All right then." With a mixture of excitement and fear, Clara climbed onto the horse strapped nearby, settling in behind him. Colt kicked the horse into motion, and Clara felt the world blur around them. The wind whipped through her hair, and adrenaline surged through her veins as they galloped down the dirt road, far away from the chaos she'd left behind. Colt shouted over the pounding hooves. She yelled back, laughter bubbling inside her, mixing surprisingly well with the thrill of the escape. As they raced further into the wild, Clara felt every fear evaporate, replaced by a sense of exhilaration that she hadn't known for far too long. She was shedding the layers of her old life, leaving behind a world filled with expectations. "We're heading toward a small ranch my friends run," Colt shouted, his voice cutting through the night air. Clara asked, excitement dancing through her. "A rough bunch," he said with a smirk. "But they've got our backs." She questioned, catching a glimpse of the life that Colt had led, filled with uncertainty. "From a past that just won't let you go," he replied, the tone of his voice shifting, revealing a glimpse of the burden he carried. The moon hung high above, illuminating the sprawling landscape around them. Clara could feel the tension crackling in the air, but she also felt liberated. The road ahead felt endless, filled with uncharted territory and endless possibilities. As they rode, Clara took in the night. Stars sparkled overhead, painting a poetic canvas against the darkness. For the first time in a long while, she felt alive, drawn by the thrill of the unknown, her spirit soaring with every thundering hoofbeat. But then they rounded a bend, and Clara saw campfires flickering in the distance. Colt slowed down, guiding the horse toward a cluster of tents and wooden structures. They approached cautiously, and Clara could feel her heart racing with both excitement and apprehension. "Stay close," Colt warned again as they dismounted. The flickering flames illuminated faces filled with stories, expressions hardened by life on the edge. Clara's stomach twisted at the thought of what might loom ahead. These were people who likely danced on the brink of danger daily, yet she felt drawn to them. Shouted a man with a grizzled beard, stepping forward. "Thought I'd mix things up a bit," Colt shot back, smirking. Clara observed the tension in the air, a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. She felt like a raw nerve standing on the precipice of something entirely new. "Name's Timber," the grizzled man said, extending his hand. "Clara," she introduced herself, feeling a mix of nerves and excitement. Timber raised an eyebrow, looking between Clara and Colt. "You sure about bringing her here?" "She's tougher than she looks," Colt replied, an unexpected pride swelling in his voice. Timber chuckled, eyeing Clara with a newfound respect. "I can handle myself," Clara asserted, her confidence blooming. "All right then. Just remember we look out for each other here," Timber said, gesturing to the flickering campfire where men and women exchanged glances, sharing stories of survival. As they settled into the camp for the night, Clara felt the weight of her decision start to settle. She was amidst a community of wanderers, each carrying tales of loss, love, and survival. She was no longer the sheltered daughter of a saloon owner. She was Clara, a woman ready to carve her path. The crackling fire illuminated their faces, revealing laughter and camaraderie as stories flowed. Clara found herself captivated by the tales of adventure and danger. She was surrounded by people who had chosen to live life on their own terms, and the thrill of their journeys wrapped around her like a warm blanket. Timber asked Clara, drawing her into the conversation. "I needed to break free," she replied, a spark in her voice. "An adventure, huh? That's what we're all looking for," Timber nodded, intrigued. "But it's not all glory and fun. It's a risk I'm willing to take," Clara answered resolutely. Just then Colt wandered over, catching the tail end of her conversation. "You sure about that, Clara? This life can get complicated." She looked him in the eye, feeling the weight of his words. "I'm ready," she said firmly. Colt nodded, a mix of admiration and caution swirling in his gaze. "All right." As night fell deeper, the fire crackled, casting shadows that danced among the trees. Clara leaned forward, captivated by the chants and stories being shared around the campfire. The thrill of the unknown enveloped her, igniting a sense of belonging she had never felt before. The wildness around her felt intoxicating, and she could sense the depth of their struggles intertwined with their laughter. It was something she yearned for deeply. But amid the joy, Clara couldn't shake the feeling that danger was never far behind. As laughter rang through the night, she sensed Colt lingering nearby, his posture tense and watchful. The evening wore on, and as the fire flickered low, Clara turned to Colt. "Now we rest for the night," he said, his gaze scanning the surroundings. Clara teased, wanting to draw him out of the shadows that encased him. "Careful keeps me breathing," Colt replied, a wry smile tugging at his lips. As Clara settled into her makeshift bed, drifting off to the soft sounds of the night, she felt a sense of comfort wash over her. There was no more chaos from the saloon, no more expectations binding her to a life she didn't want. She had chosen this path, and tomorrow would mark the beginning of her new journey. In the stillness of the night, Clara dreamt of freedom, of adventure, of dangers conquered, and of forging a life on her own terms. She could feel the thrill of the gunslinger beside her, the promise of companionship that ignited her spirit even more. The crackle of the fire faded as sleep pulled her under. Clara was dreaming. For the first time in years, she felt alive and untethered, ready to face whatever lay ahead. As dawn broke, Clara awoke to the sounds of rustling leaves and distant laughter. The day unfolded like a canvas waiting for paint, and she could feel the dawn of adventure breathing life into her spirit. The ranch came to life with energy, and Clara joined in, eager to immerse herself in the camaraderie of her newfound companions. Colt was nearby, observing as Clara engaged with the others. A sense of pride swelled within him. She was adapting quickly, weaving herself into the fabric of their community, a tapestry threaded with both vulnerability and strength. Later that day, as the sun hung high in the sky, casting golden rays over the camp, Timber approached Clara. "You got spirit, girl. I like that," he said, leaning against a wooden post. Clara smiled, feeling emboldened by his words. His wisdom resonated deeply with her, echoing the resolve that had fueled her flight from the saloon. Colt approached, a fire in his eyes. Clara felt a rush of excitement mixed with nerves. "Yeah, you'll need to know how to defend yourself if you're planning to stick around," he said, the look on his face a blend of seriousness and sincerity. "Absolutely," Clara replied, determination surging through her. Colt led her aside, away from the bustling camp. He taught her the basics of handling a firearm, showing her how to grip it firmly and aim with precision. With each lesson, Clara felt her confidence bloom, fear sinking further and further into the background. "You've got talent, Clara," Colt said, pride lining his voice as she hit her target more consistently. "Thanks for teaching me," she said, the warmth of his encouragement washing over her. "It's there. You just needed a reason to find it," he replied, stepping back to assess her stance. As days turned into weeks, they settled into a rhythm. Clara found herself more at home among the wanderers than she ever had in the saloon. She forged friendships, shared laughter, and experienced the thrill of life on the edges of society. But in the shadows, Clara felt a weight, an unspoken tension that lingered like a specter. The feeling that danger was always lurking made her restless. She learned to keep her head low, but her instincts kept telling her that their pasts were waiting to catch up with them. One evening, while Clara practiced, Timber approached her, his expression grim. "We've got trouble," he said, startling her out of her focus. Riders spotted headed this way, familiar faces. Colt walked over, his face hardening as he absorbed Timber's words. "Everyone be on guard," he commanded, voice low and resolute. Clara's heart hammered in her chest. Panic rose within her, but deep down she felt a strange confidence surging. She had fought before. There was no reason she couldn't do it again. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting shadows over the camp, Clara felt the electricity in the air. Adrenaline coursed through her veins. She was ready to face whatever was coming. The distant sound of hooves echoed through the night, growing louder. Clara stood tall, gripping her weapon tightly, as faces emerged from the shadows. The riders, merciless and familiar, rode straight into their camp, looking for trouble. Colt moved in front of her instinctively, protective yet poised as he confronted the rival group. He asked, voice steady, unwavering. "We're here for her," the lead rider snarled, gaze fixed on Clara, malice dripping from his words. "Not a chance," Colt shot back, his hands poised for action. Clara took a step forward, surprising Colt with her audacity. "I'm not going anywhere with you," she spat, her heart racing but her voice steady, the fire inside her burning bright. The lead rider laughed, echoing through the tense silence. "You think you're tough?" As tension escalated, Clara felt her heartbeat quicken, the air thick with uncertainty. "Leave her alone," Colt warned, every muscle in his body tense. The rival group shifted, the confrontation teetering on the edge of violence. Clara felt every part of her body scream with anticipation, but now she was not just watching, she was part of this moment. Without warning, chaos erupted once more. Colt moved like lightning, the guys surrounding them closing in. Clara stood her ground, every instinct firing as she took aim. She fired her weapon with a determined resolve, the noise ringing out like a declaration. Colt shouted, diving into action. Clara followed suit, adrenaline igniting every fiber of her being. Together they fought back, standing as one against those who sought to threaten their newfound freedom. As shots echoed through the night, Clara felt alive, fierce, and ready. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for this life she had chosen, for the courage she had grown into. In the fray, she caught Colt's eye, a shared understanding passing between them. They were in this together, and nothing would tear them apart. The rival group, now realizing the strength they faced, retreated into the shadows, leaving Clara and Colt to stand victorious in the night. Breathing heavily, she looked at Colt, the pride and gratitude swelling within her. "We did it," she whispered, all coloring her voice. "Don't let your guard down," he cautioned, eyes scanning the area. "I know," Clara replied, but deep inside she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She had faced down danger, not as the saloon owner's daughter, but as Clara, a woman ready to embrace her fate. They stood there amid the fading echoes of the confrontation, draped in moonlight, the night alive with possibilities once again. Clara had made her choice, had become more than she ever thought possible, and she was not going to look back. Under the star-filled sky, she felt the pulse of adventure beating all around her. With Colt beside her, she was ready to conquer whatever lay ahead together, carving paths into the unknown, free from the burdens of the past. The road stretched out before them, winding and wild, filled with promise, a mirror of her own heart. And as they stood side by side, Clara knew she had finally found her place. The world awaited them, vast and inviting, each moment an opportunity to become the woman she was always meant to be. The sound of shattering glass echoed through the saloon, drowning out the laughter and raucous cheers. Clara's heart dropped as she turned, eyes wide with panic. A fight had broken out among the patrons, fists flying and chairs tumbling like leaves caught in a storm. It was just another Friday night in Redstone, but tonight felt different. A wild, electric tension hung in the air, thrumming with untold possibilities. "Clara!" Her father's voice boomed from behind the bar, cutting through the chaos. His tone held that familiar note of frustration, demanding her attention. But instead of rushing to comply like she always did, something snapped inside her. This was her moment, the moment she had waited for, the moment she felt would burn her feet if she didn't take that first step into the unknown. The suffocating weight of expectation pressed down on her, and she could no longer breathe. With a fierce determination, she turned away from her father's call and bolted toward the back door, the heavy wooden barrier crashing open as she slipped into the cool night air. The chaos inside was replaced by a haunting stillness, and the vastness of the dark sky above her felt liberating, intoxicating. "Goodbye, Redstone," she whispered, a hint of uncertainty woven into her voice. As she dashed down the narrow alley, cobblestones crunched beneath her boots. Her heart raced not just from fear but from the thrilling grip of newfound freedom. She could feel the world rushing away, leaving behind the saloon and everything it represented, a life of confinement, limitations, and expectations. A shadow emerged from the far end of the alley, causing Clara to slow her pace. Instinctively, she felt a jolt of both excitement and trepidation. Who was standing there, cloaked in mystery under the pale glow of the moon? "Hey there, girl," the figure called out, his voice smooth yet filled with an edge that sent shivers down her spine. As he stepped into the light, Clara could see his face-sharp features framed by a weather-worn hat. A gunslinger, the kind of man her father warned her about, but the danger only added to the thrill coursing through her veins. "Escaping," she replied, clenching her fists. She refused to back down. He chuckled, a low, rumbling sound that echoed off the alley walls. "I've been scared for too long," she shot back, surprising herself with the unwavering strength in her voice. "Colt," he introduced himself, extending a hand as if they were old friends. "Clara," she said, shaking his hand, feeling an electric jolt pass between them. "What's your plan then?" he asked, curiosity sparkling in his eyes. "Maybe," she replied, emboldened by the encounter. Colt stepped closer, his gaze piercing. "Yes, I do," she said, feeling a blend of fear and excitement surge within. He studied her for a moment, as if weighing the implications of her words. "Life on the run isn't what you think, Clara. Maybe I'd rather risk it," she declared, and with that something shifted. She was no longer just a girl escaping. She was ready to transform her whole existence. "All right then," Colt said, a glimmer of respect in his eyes. With adrenaline racing through her, Clara swung her leg over the saddle of his sleek black horse, feeling the pulse of its powerful frame beneath her. She settled in behind Colt, gripping his waist as he took off into the night, the landscape rushing past them in a blur of darkness and excitement. With every gallop, Clara felt the weight of her past slip away, freeing her spirit. They rode through the winding trails, the wind tugging at her hair, each moment pushing her further from the life she had escaped. This was her chance to begin anew to chase after wild dreams and live like she never had before. Clara yelled over the rush of wind, curiosity dancing in her voice. "Freedom and danger," Colt replied without missing a beat. "I'm ready for both," she shouted back, exhilaration surging through her. As they gained distance from Redstone, Clara could feel the fierce spirit of adventure awaken deep inside her. The restrictions of the saloon, the expectations of her father, the suffocating atmosphere, all of it melted away under the glow of the moonlight. They crossed open fields where wildflowers bloomed, the scent carried by the wind wrapping around Clara's senses, drawing her further into the night. She asked, catching glimpses of Colt's profile. "Sometimes," he said. Clara inquired, sensing a deeper story simmering beneath the surface. "Let's just say I've danced with the darkness and it isn't pretty," Colt said, his voice low, sorrow threaded in the words. Clara didn't press him further. She felt the weight of his experiences pressing against her chest, yet something about it deepened their connection. In front of her sat a man shaped by wild adventures and scars, someone who had fought battles she could scarcely imagine. As night turned to dawn, the first light of day began to pierce through, illuminating the horizon. "We need to find some shelter," Colt said, scanning the landscape. "There's a ranch not far from here." "Then let's go," Clara urged, her spirit ignited by the thrill of anticipation. As they approached the ranch, a sense of belonging washed over her. The buildings were rustic and welcoming, wood weathered by time but sturdy enough to withstand anything. Clara felt a spark of hope. Perhaps this could be a new chapter for her, one that didn't involve the shadows of her past. Colt reined the horse to a stop, and they dismounted, stomping dirt from their boots. Ranch hands wandered about, tending to the horses and checking the fences, their faces lined with stories of hard work. Clara took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of hay mixed with the fresh morning air. "Welcome," a tall man greeted them, tipping his hat. "Just passing through," Colt replied, and Clara admired the way he commanded attention with little more than a few words. "Well, you're welcome to stay," the rancher said, warmth radiating from his grin. Clara looked at Colt, her heart racing. This was her chance to forge a life, to contribute rather than simply exist. "I'd love to help," she said, her voice brimming with excitement. Colt turned to her, his eyes filled with curiosity. She affirmed. "All right then," he replied, a hint of pride slipping through his guard. Days turned into weeks as Clara embraced the rhythm of ranch life. She rose with the sun, learning the ins and outs of caring for animals, mending fences, and churning butter. Each morning felt like a fresh start, and with every task she shed a little more of her old skin. But life on the ranch was not devoid of challenges. Clara soon discovered that the vastness of freedom also invited peril. One late afternoon, as she worked in the barn, a group of riders approached, their faces shadowed by hats. Clara felt a pang of unease. "Colt!" she shouted, her heart dropping into her stomach. Colt dashed toward her, his expression instantly shifting to that of alertness. "Stay behind me," he commanded, a protective instinct flaring in his eyes. The riders dismounted, looking around with casual aggression. Clara's heart raced as she watched, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. These men were trouble, she could see it etched on their faces. "Thought we might find you here, Colt," the lead rider sneered, his eyes glinting with malice. Colt retorted, positioning himself between Clara and the intruders, his posture radiating challenge. Lead rider laughed, but it was a hollow sound. Colt asked, his tone growing colder. "Let's just say you've got something we want," the rider said, stepping closer, his intentions unmistakable. Clara's instincts kicked in. She wouldn't let Colt face this alone. She demanded, stepping forward, voice steady despite the terror curling in her gut. The rider's gaze slid to her, a cruel smile emerging. "It's not the saloon owner's daughter anymore, huh?" "That's right," she shot back, facing him head-on. The tension escalated, heavy as a thundercloud, each second winding tighter. Colt's hand rested near his gun, and Clara felt the stakes rise. They were outnumbered, yet an electric courage surged through her. "Back off while you can," Colt warned, low and threatening. But the lead rider laughed, summoning the others to close in. Clara clenched her fists, adrenaline coursing through her. "Get ready," Colt said under his breath, and in that moment of unity, something flickered between them, a silent agreement that they would fight together. And then chaos descended. Shots rang out, echoing through the air, the riders lunging forward. Colt moved like a whirlwind, the gunfire punctuating the air as Clara fought alongside him, adrenaline blurring the line between fear and exhilaration. The world narrowed to the fight, and Clara felt fiercely alive, ready to confront whatever dark shadows lay ahead. With every pound of her heart and every shot fired, she embraced the moment, the thrill of survival spiraling into something powerful. As the confrontation unfolded, Clara caught a glimpse of the determination in Colt's eyes, equal parts fear and courage reflected back at her. They were a team, forged from the flames of chaos, and together they could face down anything that came their way. But just as victory loomed on the horizon, the lead rider turned, gritting his teeth. "This isn't over, Colt. Not by a long shot," he spat before retreating into the shadows, leaving Clara and Colt breathing heavily in the aftermath of the storm. Clara turned to Colt, an electric adrenaline still buzzing through her. The tension in Colt's shoulders didn't ease. "Now we prepare. They'll be back." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in fiery hues, Clara felt the weight of their reality settle like an anchor in her chest. They would face whatever darkness awaited them together. And as night fell over the ranch, Clara realized that her fight had only just begun. She was no longer merely the saloon owner's daughter. She was Clara, a woman on the cusp of her destiny, chasing danger into the heart of the unknown. Standing side by side with Colt, she understood the battle ahead was more than physical. It was a fight for carving out a life worth living, no matter the obstacles that loomed in the distance. With resolve simmering in her spirit, Clara steeled herself for the challenges to come, knowing that her adventure was only beginning. The night stretched wide before her, dark but alive, just like her heart.